Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 59, coming at you early week on this beautiful Monday evening. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you get your audio and videos on YouTube. And traditionally, like to film on Tuesday, put out the pod on Wednesday. But this week, I am headed to Boston, headed all the way across the country for my friend's bachelor party. Go catch a day game at Fenway. First time at Fenway. Pretty stoked with such a historic and iconic stadium. Catch a day game Wednesday. We got a concert Friday. And just spending some quality time. Probably do a harbor tour. Eat some good food. So excited to have a few days off, relax a little bit, get my mind right, and catch a game at Fenway. So we got some early podcast action. And that's totally okay. We have plenty to talk about as we have a lot of fights that have been announced. UFC Noche being Riyadh Noche, I guess, being finally announced. We have Ultimate Fighter episode from last week. We won't be able to recap this week's episode because it's Tuesday. Previewing the first week of PFL Playoffs, the heavyweights and women's flyweights. Recapping the pay-per-view in Manchester, UFC 304, and previewing this week's early Fight Night Abu Dhabi card. So plenty of action to jump into. Let's get it started. So we got Mateusz Gamrot, Dan Hooker, August 17th. That's coming up here soon. Definitely a clash of styles showdown, but glad to see Dan Hooker back in the octagon. Mateusz Gamrot's just going to have to take whoever he could get in a very long battle to the title shot because no one wants a grappling heavy opponent like that. Interesting gatekeeper matchup. Neil Magny trying to defend the rankings again, taking on Michael Morales August 24th. That should be an interesting test for Michael Morales. Short notice fill-in this week. We had Jordan Susenik in against Gurum Kutateladze. And we had changes there. And then Michael Oleksiuk subbing in against Shara Magomedov as their opponents have been transitioned. And we will break that down later. We have Rong Zhu and Chris Padilla September 7th. And then Marcus McGee finally getting another fight booked against Ayman Zahabi. That should be a doozy. Getting a veteran OSP taking on Ryan Superman Span. That should be a heavy-hitting affair. Moving into October, we have Robelis to Spain and Austin Lane, October 19th, as well as a flyweight test, Mathus Nicolau taking on the young climbing Asu Almabayev, which should be a fun test for him. And then at UFC 305, we have Jack Jenkins in as Gavin Tucker pulled out against Herbert Burns. Was excited to see Gavin Tucker back in the octagon. I'm assuming he pulled out due to injury. And then the final fights of UFC Noche, which I was pretty bummed Michelle Pereira and Anthony Hernandez got moved. But we have the headliner, the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili. The co-main event with two titles on the line, the trilogy between Mexico's Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. Also added Daniel Zellhuber and Esteban Robovics, Irene Aldana and Norma Dumont. So lots of Mexico blood on the card. This morning, after Dana White's announcement this past weekend, El Noche UFC tickets on sale for Fight Club members. Got in 5 racks for a nosebleed seat. We're talking Super Bowl prices. Your boy loves some Sugar Show and some UFC, but I'm not paying 5 racks to go to the Sphere for a one-and-done event. I ain't made of money like that. And, yeah, I mean, I was planning on spending maybe a rack, $1,500. But this is out of control. Normal civilians are not allowed at the Sphere, apparently. Pretty bummed to see that. Tomorrow is pre-sale and then regular general sale on Wednesday. I'm hoping tickets go down before the event or somehow could scoop up a good deal because I would love to go that. Was planning on attending, but 5 to 10 racks. I mean, hallelujah, man. But solid card. Not worth that kind of price tag. And then also announced today, Chris Curtis and Kevin Holland at UFC 307, which should be intriguing. And then Islam Makhachev has talked on social media that he may have a torn ligament in his hand, has to do surgery. So it looks like the UFC Abu Dhabi headliner will be Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria. So stay tuned for that as it's getting officialized. Also in UFC news, on the lead up to UFC 304, Paddy Pimblett announced that he has extended his UFC contract. So the opportunity to him to go and box or do something stupid no longer available, and probably doesn't need it after the performance and $200,000 bonus that he got by Uncle Dana. And then, of course, we had the Anthony Hernandez-Michel Pereira fight moved from UFC 306 to the October 19th card, which is turning out to be a pretty solid fight night card. And then for UFC Perth, UFC 305, I think an even better matchup. We have Luana Santos filling in to take on King Casey O'Neill, which should be one hell of a showdown. And there was a ton of drama with Muhammad Mokaev this week. It seems like he basically said that Dana White will not renew his contract. He told the rankings voters to keep him out of the rankings. He was announced on the UFC roster watch off the roster today. And it seems like he's probably going to go to the PFL, but the PFL doesn't have a 125 or 135 class, 135 only with Bellator. And supposedly Mokaev and his team had reached out to the PFL for a contract offer to try to use that to negotiate with the UFC. So lots of drama there. Dana White in the post-fight press conference was not happy about anything. And quite a few names. Someone on X made this comment. I guess you could tell it's Dana White Contender Series as a bunch of lackluster veterans off the roster. Solid, skilled fighters, though. We have Emily Ducote, Miguel Baeza, Nate Maness, and Josh Quinlan off the UFC roster. PFL would love to scoop them up. Emily Ducote should have won her last fight, would have been in the UFC. Miguel Baeza, plenty of potential, as well as Nate Maness, and Josh Quinlan has had his moments. But that is life in the UFC. This week we had, last Tuesday, the 22nd, we had Ultimate Fighter Episode 8. We had Alexa Grasso's fighter, Patty McCory. Has a lot of hype around him, very verbal, submitting Valentina's Mark Homey, a wrestling-heavy fighter who was winning majority of the first round with his grappling, but on a takedown, insert Patty sunk in the guillotine, got the submission. So I believe that is Alexa Grasso up 5-3 now on Team Valentina. And Mark talked about walking away. Mark, the Valentina competitor, had walked for 50 days from Johannesburg to Cape Town, Africa, which was an interesting story. And Valentina took her team on a helicopter ride at night over the Strip. She's been flexing her superstar prowess with her team, taking them to Lake Mead, and now over the Strip at night, which is something that I definitely want to do. But yeah, decent episode. Patty McCory, watch out. It'll be interesting to see how he does as they announce the semifinal matchups that'll be going down mañana. And then we have ADXC 5 on Friday. I think I talked about this 2 weeks ago. At 8 a.m. Eastern time, so early morning on the West Coast. As it's in Abu Dhabi, and some familiar names. We have Uriah Faber taking on Bibiano Fernandez, and Chad Mendez taking on Kevin Lee. Both 5 3-minute round grappling matches. Fun to see how they compete there. And then this weekend, we have the PFL playoffs, the heavyweights and the flyweights on the women's side. We have this going down in Nashville, the prelims at 3 p.m. Pacific on ESPN Plus. Then the main card at 6 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. We have Dennis Goltsov and Tim Johnson Oleg Popov and Linton Vassell in the heavyweights. And then the women's featherweights. It's not flyweights. I don't know why that's there. We have Dakota Dachiva and Jenna Bishop. And then Liz Carmouche and Talia Santos. Really interested to see that of a UFC veteran and, pretty skilled Talia Santos who just couldn't make the UFC roster or wanted to get that PFL payday. That's probably the more intriguing matchup. I'm not really excited about the heavyweight matchups, but they're setting themselves up for the $1 million showdown at the end of the year. And then I think it's like back-to-back PFL weeks. Let's see if I can look on my calendar here. So we have, it's not on that one. Let me pull it up real quick. So we have PFL this Friday, then August 16th and 23rd. So no PFL on August 9th, but 3 of the next 4 weeks through most of August. But enough of that nonsense. Let's talk that UFC action. UFC 304. I went 9-5 in my picks. Not bad. I thought I did a little better counting them up, 9-5, but that's what happens when Bilal Muhammad, remember the name, and new. Overall record, 365 wins, 183 losses, 7 no contests or draws. And on the year, 172 wins, 97 losses, 4 no contests and draws. So to recap the card, the fans' energy was high early. I believe this was kicking off like right after 11 p.m. in Manchester time. But the main event ending at like 5:30 in the morning definitely had its effects on the crowd. I saw today actually there was images of people passed out in the crowd. I mean, I couldn't imagine. My biggest question was, I've never been to the UK or London or anything like that, specifically, obviously Manchester. With all the sporting rules here, they cut off alcohol 3/4 through the game. Never would serve past 2 a.m. They were serving beers. I saw the guys drinking the beers, getting going. I love that. I don't know if that's just a foreign thing or if they made it specific for this event. I thought that was badass. But, by the time the big hometown fighters were up in the main card, there just wasn't as much energy and excitement as you would be used to. And maybe with a lot of decision fights early, the English fans were just tired and put to sleep. But the early prelims, for the most part, showed out well to get the night started. We had the banger of a scrap between Modestas Bukauskas and Marcin Prokhnio. We had Sam Patterson's round 1 submission, Mick Parkin's heavy hands to kick it off. The prelims, though, were pretty brutal and sluggish until Nathaniel Wood and Daniel Pineda put on a show, so maybe that's what put the fans tired. But the main card, I thought, overall was mixed. It definitely had some moments throughout the card. The English fighters overall went 8-3, so they had things to be happy about. There was absolutely terrible reffing the entire card. No point deductions with over and over fence grabs, whether it was Leon Edwards in the main event or in the first fight of the night, brutal fence grabs. I forget the lady's name that won. And they never docked a point, just gave stern warnings. We even had the official with Muhammad Makayev, kind of having some back and forth there. But overall, I would say for a pay-per-view, 7 out of 10. I just wish we had primetime English fans because they're freaking a rowdy bunch. And even during Patty Pimblett's awesome walkout, which is really the only thing I enjoy about Patty, they just didn't have the energy. You'd expect them to be dancing around a little bit more. Some fans were in it, some weren't. But, 5:30 in the morning, probably 4 at that point. I don't know if I could blame them. I remember how I was feeling in Miami right at the end of the Sugar Sean fight. It went daylight savings time spring forward. So it went from 2 to 3 a.m. just like that. And I was beat with the humidity. So regardless, 7 out of 10, was pretty happy with the card overall. Let's jump right into it. Some good fights. We had Sam Patterson with that round 1 submission via arm triangle choke over Kiefer Crosby that we did not break down. And I don't know, people are realizing how great of a submission the arm triangle choke is. Maybe it's just that I, getting into jiu-jitsu, was more aware of the choke, and it became my favorite submission with the way that I grapple. Very wrestling heavy, top control kind of guy. or if, people are just adding that more and more to their game, because I feel like I'm just seeing more and more arm triangle chokes. So if you don't know, I guess now you know. Sam Patterson with a brilliant one. But in the early prelims, how about Mick Parkin? Round 1 TKO over Lucas Bresky. Opening bout, don't matter. Performance of the night. 100 racks to Mick Parkin. And, Mick just had the perfect opening opportunity to get things going for the English fighters and the fans. And you could tell Mick's still young, not a ton of UFC time. He's just soaking it up. He's looking around at the arena and the crowd, see what's going on, enjoying that energy before entering the octagon. And he did somewhat, very specific, critique here. He did start somewhat slow. He was measured, kind of letting Lucas be very aggressive and throwing those big-time shots, big overs. But Mick had great defense, obviously trains with a bunch of killers, including Tom Aspinall, and just had the hand speed to do what he needed to do. And he landed a very nice combo that rocked Lucas, pounced on to get the finish, got the fans hyped late into the night, and looked like he's ready for top 15 heavyweight competition. Kind of a weird build, always composed guy, but man, that hand speed and technique, he is going to be a problem. And only like 28, I think. Statistically, it only took Mick 34 total and significant strikes with the knockdown, compared to Lucas's 26 total and 24 significant. So Mick continues to stay undefeated, keeps extending that win streak. He's now at a 10-fight winning streak, 5-0 in the UFC. And Lucas starts a new losing streak. He moves to 1-4 in the UFC. So what's next for these dudes? I say give me Mick and Martin Boudet. We don't have to rush them quite yet, but that's a step up in competition. And if Lucas is still in the UFC, how about a match with Kai Machado? And one of the cool things, I think I talked about it probably, going to UFC 299 in Miami, we saw the Happy Dad owner and a crew with a bunch of gals, and they were taste testing the new tea half and half, and it is quite the beverage. And I've enjoyed it. It's hard to find. I found it at Bevmo. So on a hot summer day here in the valley, miserable heat, really, these are going down pretty nice. Anyways, moving on, we had Modestas Bukauskas with a round 3 submission. You already know, via arm triangle choke. Get that in, sink it in. Over Marcin Prokhnio. And this was a fight I got wrong. I went with Marcin as the underdog. And the fight played out about how I expected, and the reason why I took Prokhnio. This was absolutely straight chaos as long as it lasted. Marcin was having the advantage on the feet, especially when it comes to volume. But as he does, just a little chaotic, continued to put himself in horrible positions. He started the fight early with some very good calf kicks and lower leg kicks, and it was really affecting Modestas. And as the fight went on, he didn't continue to kick the leg, which is pretty wild because by mid to late round 2, it really seemed like Bukauskas' leg was done for. And Marcin landed more volume, obviously, in round 1. Round 2, Modestas did get a takedown, which was much needed, as he got a wear on Marcin, and once you take Prokhnio down, he just lays flat on his back, just kind of looks to burn time, strike from his back. He's not really doing jiu-jitsu or trying to get up to his feet. So that was huge for Modestas. And once Marcin got back up, he continued to pour it on with his wild strikes. He did have Modestas rocked with a wild head kick up against the cage. He has a karate background. He was able to get his leg up to his head with the guy standing like 2 feet in front of him. Like that hip flexibility to even get power on it. Very, very impressive. And when he had him rocked, he kind of just sat there and really didn't move. I think it might have been a little bit of exhaustion. But if he would have poured it on there, I think he could have got the finish because Modestas was pretty dang rocked. And for some reason, after struggling to get up from takedowns in round 3, he tried to hip toss Modestas. They're scrambling. Marcin's landing the better shots. They kind of get locked in from shots, clinch up to each other. I think he had a whizzer and tried to toss him over, but ended up getting rolled through, and Modestas was on top. And that really was the end of the fight, as Marcin was completely gassed from all the volume and chances that he threw with those strikes. And Modestas is not the best of grapplers whatsoever, but he did get the easy submission as Marcin was kind of dead in the water. But statistically, I mean, this kind of tells the story. Modestas landed 56 total strikes, 38 of them significant. He went 2 for 2 in takedown attempts, a submission attempt, and had 5 minutes and 31 seconds of control time. So a lot in round 2, he was in control. And then Marcin, you look at the volume here, he landed 120 strikes, so almost doubled Modestas' output, and 70 significant, almost doubled the significant strikes as well. So Modestas starts a new winning streak. He moves to 5-1 since 2022 and is 3-1 in the UFC. And Marcin starts a new losing streak. He is 2-3 since 2022. So what's next? I would love to see Modestas and Kennedy and Shekaku. I think that would be a ton of fun, while Marcin could scrap with Nikolai Nigamaranu. But that was the early prelims. What a doozy that was. A little chaotic, a little fun, but sometimes you need a brawl, especially in Manchester. But kicking it off in the prelims, this bout was all over the place. It started on the early prelims. It went to the main card. Now it's at the prelim opener. But we had Muhammad Makayev with a unanimous decision over Manel Kopp. And usually I always show excitement for the fights, but this was an absolute shit show. I don't have really anything positive to say about this fight or either fighter. After all the crazy antics, the bad blood, fighting everywhere, the sucker punch at the weigh-ins, even when they get into the cage, they're trying to fight. But once they actually have the opportunity to fight, they barely fought at all or threw anything, which is extremely weird from a striker standpoint in Kopp, who usually lets his hands fly and was really angry with Makayev, talked about like ending him, blah, blah, blah. You know, I would assume the back and forth on why it didn't happen was Muhammad was probably waiting for Kopp to attack to try to counter him and get takedowns. But Kopp did have a toe issue pretty early in the fight. I'm assuming there was some issues there. I don't know the specifics with it. But again, before the fight, they're trying to fight. The ref and security has to come in, separate them, get them at distance to be able to start the fight. Then the fight starts. They stay at distance, barely throw any shots. Manel Kopp's corner is begging for him to throw strikes. Muhammad, now cut from the UFC, not having a renewed contract. You know, Dana had plenty to say again in the post-fight press conference, stating that the matchmakers aren't happy with him. Come to find out, his team and him were negotiating with the PFL to try to up his price. And Kopp, in general, outside of this, he's always starting shit with his opponents. He was trying to start shit with Izzy at the press conference a couple pay-per-views ago. You know, he misses weight. He isn't an active fighter. He's one of the most least reliable flyweights. So, yeah, I'm not happy with the way he performed at all or the way he goes about his business. I mean, maybe there's not enough people in the flyweight division. You already cut Muhammad Makayev. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's close to being cut himself. Statistically, Muhammad landed 47 total strikes in 15 minutes. 30 of them significant. That's just not enough. He did have 3 takedowns and 8 attempts and 2 minutes and 11 seconds of control time. And Manel landed 34 total strikes, 20 of them significant. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. I mean, barely 10 strikes around from Manel. Yeah, I mean, it was the men's version of Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza. It really was. But with a bunch of smoke and clouds to like make it act like it was good, smoke and mirrors, and then, you know, nothing happened. What a weird thing. Makayev stays undefeated. He extends his winning streak to 13. Ends up being 7-0 in the UFC, but he will be fighting elsewhere. And Manel ends his 4-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. Before the official roster remove of Muhammad Makayev, I was thinking that Muhammad and Brandon Moreno would be fun. But, he probably will go to the PFL. That's the next best thing. They don't have a flyweight division. Only Bellator having a bantamweight division. So who knows what's going to happen. He can't even try to figure out who he's going to fight. It's going to be a while, I would assume. And for Manel, he could take on Tagir Ulanbekov. I would feed him another grappler if I was the UFC brass. Hey, this is what it is. You have to take it or we'll cut your ass. Regardless, I'm glad I got the win with Muhammad Makayev. That was quite the shit show. But the prelim headliner doing work, we had Nathaniel Wood with a unanimous decision over Daniel Pineda. And this was just a fun scrap, man. Pineda especially got to showcase how tough he is. Wow, really impressive. Round 1 was an absolute brawl. Wood immediately from the bell, powerful kicks to the body, one middle, one high. Love to see that because in his last fight, he kind of went away from those. So it was great to see. He continued to defend takedowns better from Daniel. Daniel obviously landed some powerful combos up top throughout the fight. But round 2, Nathaniel found his flow, and Daniel kind of had to resort to grappling as he was getting outstruck, but didn't have much success there. And then Wood knocked Daniel down. Daniel somehow stayed calm, cool, collective, and continued to push in this fight. He didn't give up. He didn't lose any demeanor. And round 3, Daniel knew he had to get a finish, and he went for broke. Big wild strikes, big loopy shots, tried for takedowns, got a takedown. Nathaniel reversed him, ended up on top. Brilliant display by Nathaniel Wood. Scrappy, gritty by Daniel Pineda. And it just shows, Wood's looking better than ever, especially in his striking. And that was against a solid, savvy veteran who's down to scrap, has a ton of experience. Beautiful night in the octagon for Nathaniel Wood. Statistically, Nathaniel landed 81 total strikes, 66 of them significant. He had a submission attempt, a reversal, a knockdown, and 3 minutes and 42 seconds of control time. Daniel landed 80 total strikes, so almost the same amount, but 32 of them significant. He had a takedown and 6 attempts, so brutal night with takedown attempts there. Again, Nathaniel kind of turned him into a grappler. Daniel also had 2 reversals and 5 minutes and 32 seconds of control time. So Nathaniel starts a new winning streak. He is 4-1 since 2022. Daniel extends his losing streak to 2. He's only 1-2 since 2022. Hasn't been very active. I just say let's book it another amazing fight for the fighters as well as the fans. Let's get Nathaniel Wood and Alex Caceres. And for Daniel, how about a match with Fernando Padilla? That would be one hell of a scrap. Moving into the main card, Arnold Allen with the unanimous decision over Giga Chikadze. I was pretty confident Allen's striking, I was just confident was better than Giga's. I knew it would be a little bit of a dogfight. Giga would have his moments. But man, for all the smack talk Giga dishes out, he sure was on the run and on his bike the entire fight. He didn't want that smoke, man. Arnold was boxing him up. He was pressuring him, cutting him off in the octagon. Of course, Giga did land some solid kicks, some strikes, trying to get off the octagon cage and move around and circle to get space. But it usually was just like 1 or 2 strikes and circle. 1 and 2 strikes and circle. Avoid the damage. Stay away from the almighty Arnold Allen as he would dish it out. And poor Arnold, that's got to be frustrating. Our opponent's always on the run. I would say round 1 was Giga's best round. And by round 3, he was tired because when you're backpedaling the whole time, moving, that's gonna wear out your stamina. But Arnold poured it on, got to clinch the victory with his striking in round 3. And it's just clear Arnold was the better striker. There was talk with Beneil Dariush that we might see some grappling for Giga, but we did not see that. Statistically, Arnold landed 61 total and significant strikes. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. And Giga landed 39 total and 38 significant strikes. That's basically Manel Kopp output. Again, he was on the run. But Arnold ends his 2-fight losing streak, starts a new winning streak. It's got to feel good. He is 3-2 since 2022. He's been active. And Giga starts a new losing streak. He moves to 1-2 since 2022. So what's next? This is absolutely box office. It's the fight that makes sense. Arnold Allen, Yair Rodriguez would be absolutely bonkers, while Giga can get a fight with Dan Ige, which would also be one hell of a scrap. Moving on, I tried telling y'all, if you didn't know, we had Gregory Rodriguez with a unanimous decision over Christian Leroy Duncan. And in kind of a different fashion, CLD was also kind of on the run most of this fight. He wasn't on his bike circling. He was trying to clinch and avoid the shots. But the moment CLD got into some exchanges and felt the power of RoboCop, he learned that there's just levels to this very tough, hard-hitting middleweight division. There is just straight power strikers in this division. And Gregory was just outboxing him. On target with damn near everything he threw. Had more power, precision, and technique. And CLD was doing whatever he could to bounce in and out. Now, not quite as extreme as MVP, but just trying to bounce in and out, get the technique flowing, use his speed to his advantage. But every time he got in, Gregory was down to have a freaking absolute car collision in the center of the octagon. He wasn't moving. He was just letting those bombs go like precise missile to CLD. And credit to CLD, I knew this was a big test for him. It was a big step up in competition. But he showed that he is a very competitive fighter, has that competitive spirit. He tried every trick in his tool bag to catch Gregory. At one point, he posted his hand and did like the cartwheel kick. He continued just to bring the fight to Gregory as well. Although he really dealt with 15 minutes of being dominated in there. He was, outstruck, he was outgrappled, and just pretty much smothered by RoboCop. Which Gregory Rodriguez, with the way he's performing, and you could tell has dedicated himself to this, he is going to do that to a lot of fighters. But CLD eventually just ended up going to the clinch with RoboCop. Just try to kind of wear on him. It helped him avoid damage. He was having a hematoma on his head, was bloodied up a little bit. Just tried to wear on the veteran, but he didn't do much with the clinches offensively. And RoboCop, again, brilliant display, continuing to evolve fight after fight, is an absolute problem for the division. Really a complete fighter that I doubt anybody is wanting to play with or sign a contract to match up with him. Statistically, Gregory landed 78 total strikes, 45 of them significant. He had 4 takedowns in 12 attempts, and 8 minutes and 20 seconds of control time, so a round and a half. And CLD landed 53 total strikes, 29 of them significant, and had a minute and 45 seconds of control time as well. So Gregory extends his winning streak to 3. He is 5-2 since 2022. The guy loves to fight. He's always active. And CLD ends his 2-fight winning streak. He is 3-2 in the UFC. I thought that getting a fight with RoboCop and Chris Curtis would be fantastic. But then Chris Curtis got booked with Kevin Holland this morning. So I had to change it. I posted on Matchmaker Monday. Again, if you're not following me, check it out. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, wherever. I said, how about Gregory Rodriguez and Joe Pyfer, baby? Come on now. And for CLD, he could take a scrap with Marc-Andre Barriault. I think that would be an amazing stylistic matchup. Moving on, a fight I got wrong, but, I definitely saw this coming. We had Paddy Pimblett with a round 1 submission via triangle choke over King Green. It ain't Bobby Green, it's King Green. And, absolute big bonus for Paddy Pimblett. Dana White gave him $200,000. I'm not too sure why. You would think a fight of the night, performance of the night, something like that. But he did not have a fight of the night. Didn't last that long. But he gets 200 G's. Welcome to the new contract. The storyline for me in this fight was really how can Paddy handle the striking exchanges that will be in store with a very fast and savvy striker in King Green. But, they did exchange a little bit in this fight. Paddy was able to keep King at range, and Bobby just couldn't come in and get clean strikes. He was missing. He was out of range. And you got to give credit to Paddy there. But every big power shot he threw, they weren't clean, they weren't hitting. And surprisingly, after about 10 to 15 attempts, he shot in for a takedown because Paddy was calm. He wasn't moving forward, kind of keeping at his own range. Bobby shoots for a takedown. He does have wrestling ability. That's Paddy's strong suit as well. And Paddy immediately jumped for a guillotine. Looked like it was going to be deep. Right as Green was going out, beautiful transition. I mean, absolute beautiful transition right into a deep triangle choke. And Bobby's just kind of laying on his legs, head down, arms up. That's like the least thing you could do when you're in someone's guard, especially someone with the prowess of Paddy. I'm not too sure if he was so excited to, get in, maybe land some ground and pound or what. But that triangle choke was deep immediately. Terrible defense by Bobby. And, he gave it to him. He choked it in so bad that he fell right asleep. And not only did he have the arm, but he could have extended the arm, and he's just completely passed out. He's been memed a little bit. But this is the best and biggest moment and performance of Paddy Pimblett's pro career. Very impressive, especially considering what he said about the depression issues in his fight camp that almost had him pull out of the fight. His team had to convince him to stay in there. 200 G's plus a performance in front of the hometown. Night in the office. What a night for Paddy Pimblett. Or what a morning, I should say. So, statistically, King only landed 15 total and significant strikes with the takedown. Paddy landed 10 total and 8 significant with 2 submission attempts. Paddy's going to love a fight where he doesn't have to throw more than 10 strikes. And King starts a new losing streak. He moves to 4-1 since 2022. One of the more active guys in UFC history. 9 fights since 2022. And Paddy extends his winning streak to 8. He is 6-0 in the UFC. So what's next? Well, Paddy called for Renato. That he's booked with Benoit Saint-Denis. I do expect Renato to lose that fight. So I'm going to say give me Paddy and Jalen Turner. I think that would be a pretty gnarly matchup. Another good test for Paddy. And for King, a fight that makes too much sense for me. These two have been around. I'm surprised this hasn't been booked before. But give me a banger. King Green and Diego Ferreira. That's going to be absolutely, absolutely violent all over the place. Beautiful performance by Paddy. I'll take that loss. Then we had the big dog, the alpha female, Tom Aspinall. Round 1 TKO over Curtis Blades. Performance of the night. 100 G's for Tommy Aspinall. And with 2 big titans like this, to no surprise, this fight didn't last super long. Curtis got a little overzealous, landing some nice combinations early as Tom was just kind of stuck in his ways. And I think that had him kind of let loose a little bit, thinking he could land. But then Tom let her go, smashed him with an absolutely beautiful right, sat him down. Tom got on to him, put his weight on, was grounding and pounding. And, there was some debate that this was an early finish and stoppage, but Curtis wasn't going to be able to defend anything from his back. And to Tom's point, I don't think if they would have let it go, all that's going to happen is more damage to Curtis and probably would have been put to sleep. I don't think Blades is protesting that. But man, is Tom Aspinall a brilliant mix of power and speed. And boy, was that power on display again. Golly! Statistically, Tom landed 14 total and significant strikes with the knockdown. Curtis landed 5 total and significant. So Tom extends his winning streak to 3. He is 4-1 since 2022. And Curtis starts a new losing streak. He is 3-2 since 2022. So what's next? Well, I think Tom is going to get the winner of the John Jones-Stipe fight. But I logically think both of them will retire and won't fight again. Because why would you want to fight the young, hungry lion, Tom Aspinall? But I will say this. If John Jones beats Stipe Miocic and fights Tom Aspinall and beats him, that is cemented the most goatish, most badass thing I will ever see. I hope it happens. I just logistically don't think that'll happen. So I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall and the winner of the Volkov-Cyril Gane fight. Tom has not fought Cyril Gane. That could be somewhat fun maybe. And he had battled with Volkov, which I believe was his loss, right? No, that can't be. Who did Tom Aspinall lose to? I already forgot. 31 years old, guy's an absolute beast. He lost to Curtis Blades, the knee thing. But he already beat Alexander Volkov straight arm bar in round 1, performance of the night. So it'd be a Volkov 2 or Cyril Gane. That's really only people that are ready for him. And for Curtis, I think you could get the loser of the Volkov-Gane fight or the winner of the Marcin Tybura-Sergey Spivak fight in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. But Tom Aspinall, Paddy Pimblett, I mean, come on. Gregory Rodriguez, Arnold Allen, the English boys on display. And then this guy came in and sucked the air out of the arena. We had Bilal Muhammad, unanimous decision over Leon Edwards. And I don't know, so my girlfriend is Lebanese, the pro-Palestine stuff, she was loving it. The UFC embedded where he talked about it, and the countdown where he had the family from Palestine, Jude, who got his leg blew off, put me to tears, amazing stuff. I hate to see what's going on over there. I'm not political, very much so, and I definitely am probably a bigger fan of Bilal than most, just for the human he is. You gotta just respect hard work. This guy's just working hard. He doesn't have a lot of the other things. But my whole takeaway was this just is a weird night, man. There's a weird fight, a weirder result in this fight. I don't think I could have expected much of how this went down. I could have expected Bilal getting takedowns. Or maybe even Leon taking Bilal down, which is also a little bit of a shocker. But I'm just more shocked that I did not see any killer instinct from Leon. His body language, his energy in the corner after the fight, his eyes, just everything about him and his demeanor just was straight dog shit. And that's what made Leon the champ. He's a gritty English guy, come from the fucking streets, has a chip on his shoulder. And that's what helped him take down one of the GOATs, probably the welterweight GOAT. Well, GSP, I think, was in that division, right? The Mount Rushmore fighter of the division, not only did he beat Kamaru Usman once, but fucking twice. And Leon just wasn't moving and flowing. He wasn't letting his hands fly at all. He wasn't having Bilal pay for closing distance. The only time aggression came out was at the very end of the fight when he's already lost the fight in round 5. He reversed Bilal with 45 seconds left and just put all of that energy and just frustration on some nasty elbows at ground and pound. He did end up splitting Bilal's nose open before the horn to end the fight. But that's just why did it take him that long? I mean, obviously in the first Kamaru Usman, it took his coach to really fire him up for the head kick. I don't know. The guy is just a weird internal emotional being, and I would love to understand who he is as a person. But I just got weird-ass vibes the entire fight from Leon. And the only round where Leon threw more than 20 strikes was in round 1, and he threw 25. So there's just not normal output for Leon. He was very successful against grapplers like Colby Covington and Kamaru, because when fighters tried to take him down, he immediately got to the hands. He attacked the lock. He had a 2-on-1, broke the lock. He didn't even come close to doing that with Bilal. His hands were always up high. Bilal was able to do with what he wanted, get under the butt, lift his ass up. And Bilal didn't even throw big, powerful kicks that we're used to seeing or that really showed out in the Sean Brady fight, those high kicks. It was just slow 1-2, loopy 1-2s to try to keep Leon from circling. A couple uppercuts, 1-2 uppercut. And Leon, just as the high elbow guard, it was coming through every time, but he really wasn't trying to dodge anything. He wasn't moving and striking back. If Bilal's going to have a sloppy 1-2, come in with the speed. None of that. He wasn't putting Bilal on the back foot. Bilal continued to come forward. Leon was consistently getting up against the cage and having to battle off against the cage, which obviously is going to make takedowns easier for Bilal. And most of the takedowns are easy, kind of blast doubles, almost like a football tackle straight into the lock. Well, Leon's arms are still here because Bilal got him with the sloppy 1-2. He's kind of sitting here. Boom, blast double. He has no reaction, though. Blast double, your legs are up from covering up. Usually his arms going immediately to that lock. He did not do that at all. Absolutely easy takedowns for Bilal. Lifted him up really easily. One of the high crotch takedowns Bilal got, dropped Leon on his head. Leon didn't even post his arm to protect himself, smashed his head. And I'm like, there was already weirdness before that moment, But did that have any kind of part to Leon's terrible display, the sluggish performance? Was he, partly concussed? Was it strictly that it was 5 a.m.? Very curious to know what led to that. And you never know what people are going through personally. But you would expect that he would prepare for the time. It didn't affect Tom Aspinall, didn't affect Patty, didn't affect none of those guys. Arnold Allen. And even in the first fight between Leon and Bilal, Leon was flowing. He was moving, striking in bunches. Very weird main event. It just doesn't really add up. And it's not that I, again, want to avoid giving Bilal credit at all. I do believe I'm probably a bigger fan than most. It was just a weird, series of events for 25 minutes. I will say, though, I understand why people don't like Bilal. I wasn't a big fan of how Bilal handled himself leading up to the fight, how he spoke to the fans. He didn't seem genuine in his post-fight interview. He just said, everyone with your tears, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't think he really won more fans being the welterweight champion. And that's just a sad thing for a guy that's put in so much work. He's on his victory tour. I saw the Free Palestine stuff. It is what it is. But a very, very weird main event that 7 out of 10 card recap, I almost want to put lower because it made you feel weird at the end of it. Obviously, Dana felt some of that as well. But Leon only landed 89 total strikes, 47 of them significant, 2 takedowns, 2 reversals, and 7 minutes and 11 seconds of control time. Bilal landed 192, doubled them up. 68 of those were significant. He had 9 takedowns and 13 attempts, and 12 minutes of control time. 12 minutes and 2 seconds to be exact, so more than 2 rounds. And Bilal extends his winning streak to 10. He's 15-3-1 in the UFC. And Leon ends his 12-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He is 14-2-1 in the UFC. So both guys, lots of success in the UFC, in the division. I do think it is ironic, Leon getting those takedowns and doing them pretty easily, reversing Bilal for as much of a grappling fighter Bilal is, and training with Khabib and them. You can't be letting Leon Edwards do that. Regardless, what's next? I do think it's going to be Bilal and Shavkat Rakhmonov for the title. And then I do think Leon and Jack Della Maddalena would be a ton of fun. I've seen things, people talking about Ian Gary. Screw that. Ian doesn't deserve it. Jack deserves it after that Gilbert Burns performance. Way better of a stylistic matchup. So let's make that banger happen. What a card. The English show out. I wish it was prime time for them and earlier for us, to be honest. That was interesting to see. People sleeping, tired, not the energy, drinking beers until 5 in the morning. Speaking of early, we're back to early action and foreign action. We have UFC Abu Dhabi with the prelims starting at 9 a.m. Pacific on ESPN2. The main card at 12 p.m. Pacific on ABC. Be tuning in on my flight to try to watch this. Pray that I get a decent signal on the plane Wi-Fi. But previewing this card, Nate Diaz pulling out, or Nick Diaz. Wait, is it Nick or Nate? It is Nick Diaz, right? Yeah. Nick Diaz being out of the fight, which would have been a long awaited return. Definitely kind of would have added some juice to this card, in my opinion. But the prelims have some evenly matched fights, which will usually equal to good fights. And the main card is very fun, including the main event. So for a fight night, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 in my preview. A good fight that I will not break down. We have Dana White Contender Series Victoria Dudakova taking on Sam Hughes. But we're going to kick this bad boy off in the prelims. We have Guram, the Georgian Viking Kutateladze, taking on, I think, his third opponent in about a month. Jordan, the Epidemic Vucenic, with a 13-2 record. Now, Guram was scheduled to fight Abdul Karim Al-Selwade, who was actually going to make his third UFC appearance since his Contender Series victory. But now he's getting Jordan, a Cage Warriors alum, who's on a roll. Nice record at 13-2. Is nearing his prime at 28 years old, but is taking this fight on like 2 weeks' notice. Let me pull this up real quick. And Guram is, 32? Sorry, I don't know why I didn't have this on there. Yeah, he's 32 and Jordan is 28. So breaking this down, Guram is an M1 and Brave alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's only 1-2 in the UFC. But I'll tell you what, he is an amazing technical striker and is absolutely a blast to watch. My first intro to him, I think, was probably his UFC debut fight against Damir Ismagulov. One of my favorite fights that I've ever watched. So that's why we're talking about it, because the Georgian Viking is one hell of a fighter. He has just fought really stiff competition. And 7 of his 12 wins are via knockout. He's also a finisher. Now, Jordan is a Cage Warriors alum. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. 6 of his 13 wins are via submission. Now, looking at this fight again, Guram is a complete fighter. He's going to work in the toughest division in the UFC, in the lightweight division. He has the speed. He has the technique when it comes to his striking. I think it's very unmatched. His kicks are amazing. He has battled incredibly tough competition this far in the UFC. He lost to Elves Brenner, a very close match with Damir Ismagulov, and then he actually defeated Mateusz Gamrot, and we know how good he is. But he's only fought 3 times in the UFC since 2020, hasn't been super active. We don't know. I'd assume he's been at work improving. But Jordan is coming off 5 straight submission victories. He will be a threat in this fight. Another tough matchup for Guram. Potentially a stylistic issue here for Guram as well. But I am going with the Georgian Viking. I'm putting Kuta Taladze on my parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. These guys' names are ridiculous. It's hard to say sometimes. I'm trying my best getting them down. That was funny. But moving on, we have Dontel, Lord Kong Mays. 32 years old with an 11-6 record, taking on Shamil Gaziev, 34 years old with a 12-1 record. Now, this is a fun matchup between 2 big guys in their primes. I do think this is a very evenly matched fight. There's a ton on the line as they both are trying to jockey and get into the deep end of the heavyweight division. Shamil has had a mixed UFC run this far, and Dontel has steadily shown improvement in his game, but he really is looking for a quality UFC win. He has fought to a lot of decisions, so let's see if this changes. Breaking it down, Dontel trains out of Jackson Wink MMA. He's an RFA, LFA, and Contender Series 3 times alum, which is probably never a good thing. Let's fact check this to be specific. But I think he lost one, won one, but didn't do enough, and then won the 3rd one to get the contract. So he fought Alan Crowder in August of 2017. I have no idea who Alan is, but he got knocked out in the 3rd round, or TKO'd. He got another chance a year later, July of 2018, and TKO'd Mitchell Seep. Kind of shocked why he didn't get a contract. Dana White made him then go to V3 Fights 71 to submit a guy. It said verbal. The guy verbally submitted in Robinsonville, Mississippi. Could only imagine what happened there. Might have to see if that's in the old Fight Pass archives. And then in 2019, 2 years later in July, he TKO'd Ricardo Purcell. Haven't heard of any of these guys, to earn his UFC debut. And then, oh man, this guy. Then the UFC puts him in against Cyril Gahn, where he gets heel hooked, and then Rodrigo Nascimento, where he gets rear naked choked. What a tough road for Dontel Mays, man. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He has 2-1 since 2022. 6 of his 11 wins are via knockout, and he has had a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Bringing that up just makes me think that's kind of why I want to have fighters come on and tell their stories. Look at what Dontel Mays has been through just to get there. He probably isn't on a fat contract and doing so much damage to his body. I want to be able to have fighters give back to the young fighters, let them know the reality of what's in it and what it takes to be at championship level. That's just brutal, man. That's like me in the tech world going to 15 different companies and having to start over and start at lower wages and still not be where I need to be. I mean, I feel for the guy. And Shamil, he is a Brave and Contender Series alum as well. 8 of his 12 wins are via knockout. Now, Shamil, he definitely gassed out in his first 3-round affair. It's not that he hasn't fought 3 rounds. It was his first fight in the UFC that went 3 rounds. I do think that was a big learning lesson for himself to grow. I mean, I'd hope so. You watch that tape, you want to be better. You don't want to embarrass yourself on national TV like that. And he hasn't been into the 3rd round before that fight since June of 2022. So I think he's going to need that cardio and stamina in this fight because Dontel is measured. He has a tight game plan. He never puts himself in too much danger. Unless Shamil can find a knockout early, I expect this fight to go to a decision. I do think Shamil is more talented overall, but this is going to be a very, very close fight. I expect Mays to even add in some clinch work, maybe some dirty boxing to smother Shamil. But I am picking Shamil Gaziev. I am not putting this on any parlays. Would not be shocked if Dontel wins late or by a very close split decision. That does have split decision written all over it, to be honest. Then in the prelim headliner, I'm pretty excited about this one. We have Alonzo Atomic Menefield, 36 years old with a 15-4-1 record and the number 15 next to his name, taking on Azamat Murzakanov, 35 years old with an undefeated 13-0 record and the number 14 next to his name. It's always interesting when you see these guys undefeated, not a lot of fights, 35 years old. Even Alonzo, barely 20 fights, 36 years old. Like, they don't have a ton of time left. And for that, this is good matchmaking. Why? Because both men, if they want to make money, they want to have a career or hopes of moving up, they have to get a win here. This should be an absolutely fun and bonker 15-minute affair of straight kickboxing and high IQ fighting. I do think Alonzo is going to be a little bit of an eager fighter here to right, the wrong in his loss against Carlos Olberg only 2 months ago, and that may be a detriment to this. And Azamat is looking to keep the good times rolling, moving up the rankings. I actually had to tape these guys, and I taped a couple of their last fights that's how close it is. But breaking it down, Alonzo is a Bellator, RFA, LFA, and Contender Series 2-time alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He is 4-1-1 since 2022. 10 of his 15 wins are via knockout. 2 of his 4 losses are via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. He does have a 4.5-inch reach advantage here. Meanwhile, Azamat is undefeated, 13-fight winning streak, 4-0 in the UFC. 9 of his 13 wins are via knockout. Now, Azamat is very talented, and Alonzo, I do think, is fighting the best he has ever fought of late. Sub the Olberg fight, which, why would you bum rush Olberg at the start of a fight? It's probably not going to go well. But both men have recent unanimous decision wins over Dustin Jacoby. So I watched both of them fight Dustin Jacoby, which obviously he's a lot different than the 2 men that are fighting here. But my takeaways are both men obviously heavy power strikers. Alonzo clearly in better shape. Azamat looks like a guy at a bar that if he's talking shit, you're like, all right, I'll fuck with this guy. Alonzo, you look at him, you're like, all right, I'm running away. I do think if grappling does come into display, which Alonzo tends to not do for some reason, he is the better grappler. He is more of a technical striker, a lot more straighter shots. Meanwhile, Azamat, he's always got weird motion, weird angles with big loopy shots, a lot of hooks. It could be a challenge to deal with, especially with the fast hands that he has. He is going to be quicker with the strikes than Alonzo. I do expect Azamat to push forward early, bring the fight to Alonzo. But if Menefield can jab and kick at Azamat at range a little bit, slow things down, try to chop out a leg, keep that power out from him, I think he'll have a great night in the octagon. But sometimes Alonzo just sees red and goes for it. Now, Azamat's actually a big betting favorite here. I could see him slugging away, clipping Alonzo early. I'm just not betting on that. So I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking Alonzo Menefield. The dog's coming to eat. Hoo hoo! I will not put that on a parlay, though. I am taking him for fun. Then in the main card, we have Joel El Fenomeno Alvarez, 31 years old with a 20-3 record, taking on Elves Brenner, 26 years old with a 16-4 record. Now, what an absolutely fantastic matchup to kick off the main card. Joel is just now in his prime. He's ran through his competition outside of Arman Sarukian and Demir Ismagulov. But those guys, brutal matchups for a young fighter to take on. And Joel has really impressed me. I think he's going to be an absolute problem in the lightweight division. Elves, though, he's had an impressive UFC run this far as well. He's fun. He's still improving a lot and is, young at 26, almost 27 years old. That's how hot it is. Like, pulled these nice and cold out of the fridge. This one's already warm. We're upstairs, got the fan, but life in the desert, man. So breaking it down, Joel has a brown belt in BJJ. He's a Rage in the Cage and M1 alum. He's on a one-fight winning streak, only 1-1 since 2022. Now, Joel has had some visa issues. He's had weight issues. He's missed weight a couple times. He's had 4 canceled fights of late. That hasn't let him be very active, some from him, some from his opponents. So that always is sketchy when you have a guy with so many issues all the time. 17 of his 20 wins are via submission. 2 of his 3 losses are via knockout. And he has a 4.5-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Els trains out of Shootbox Diego Lima. He's on a 1-fight losing streak, 3-1 in the UFC. 11 of his 16 wins are via submission. I just really don't think Elves is going to be able to catch Joel in this fight. I see that really only being his path to victory being a knockout. And Joel is a longer, more technical fighter. He's in his prime at 31 years old. The time's now to show off and show out. I think he may even have the speed advantage here. Now, both men willing to exchange. They're down to brawl. This should be a fantastic, violent matchup. But I am taking El Fenomeno. I am avoiding this on any parlays, though. This is going to be an absolutely fun fight for the main card to kick off. Moving on. We have Mackenzie Dern, 31 years old with a 13-5 record, and the number 7 next to her name, taking on Lupi Godinez, 30 years old with a 12-4 record, and the number 10 next to her name. Now, this is a high-level strawweight showdown. Lupi's getting a chance to crack into the top of the division again. She's going to face a mainstay in her prime, as is Mackenzie Dern. And, Dern has been in the division's deep end since 2021. She has struggled against the highly skilled strikers in the division. She's changed coaches, changed camps. She's dealt with the divorce issues she's been vocal about, looking to get back on track better now than ever. But Lupi, she's been rolling through a lot of other young talented fighters in the division, but she learned what Virna Jandiroba is all about and what she can do with the grappling. So now she gets a chance to show out with Dern, who's not necessarily a wrestling-heavy fighter, great grappler, but Dern has been known to get a little sloppy and be down to scrap. Breaking this one down, Mackenzie has a BJJ style. She has a 3rd-degree black belt in BJJ. She won gold in the 2015 ADCC Worlds, the 2015 Worlds and World Cup, the 14 Nogi Worlds, and the 16 Worlds and World Cup. She's an absolutely amazing grappler. Her dad and team that she's around, some of the best in the world. Now, 3 of her last 6 fights were fight of the night. So, tough stretch, but she's showing up, she's showing out. She's a Legacy FC, LFA, and Invicta alum. She has the most submission wins in UFC Women's Strawweight Division history with 4. The most submission attempts in UFC Women's Strawweight Division history with 15. She's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 2-3 since 2022. 7 of her 13 wins are via submission. Now, Lupi has a purple belt in BJJ. She has the record for fastest turnaround in modern UFC history at 7 days. She has the record for the fastest span between 3 fights in modern UFC history, 42 days. She's the first and only woman to win 4 fights in a calendar year in UFC history. She burst onto the scene from the LFA, where she is an alum and former champion. She's on a 1-fight losing streak, but 5-2 since 2022. She's always active. And man, is this fight hard to pick. Both women have solid but not amazing striking. They're both durable. Again, down to scrap. Loopy, decent grappling. Mackenzie, amazing grappling. And if Mackenzie can find ways to get Loopy down, trips, clinch, somehow let her BJJ go to work, I do think she will have success. But I do believe that Loopy is the better, more technical striker. She's more consistent in her fighting. And with Mackenzie right now, you just never know what you're going to get these days. For that reason, I'm taking another underdog. I'm taking Loopy Godinez. She's coming to eat. Ho, ho. Again, though, not confident enough to put that in a parlay. That's a very, very good close fight. Moving on, we have Michael Maverick Chiesa, 36 years old with an 18-7 record, taking on Tony El Kukui Ferguson, 40 years old with an 18-7 record. It's ironic, both of these guys, 18-7 records. And I really do hope this is Tony's last dance. He's taken on a man who hasn't been active since 2021, is in desperate need for his win himself, kind of at the edge of his prime, but, not 40 like Tony. And Tony actually, for this losing streak and all the shit people give him, he's been respectable in the octagon the past year, fought decently with Patty and Bobby, but he's on a massive skid and obviously declining. Breaking this one down, Michael has a wrestling style. He trains, he's a southpaw fighter. He trains out of Sick Jitsu in, not Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, Washington, Spokanistan. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He has the fewest strikes absorbed per minute in UFC welterweight division history at .88, and that could be because of his grappling. He has the most submission losses by Darce choke in UFC history with 3 of them things. He talked about that openly in the Kevin Holland fight. He's like, just don't lose via Darce. He lost via Darce. He is an Ultimate Fighter alum and champion. I've been a fan ever since. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He has not won since January of 2021. 10 of his 16 wins are via submission. 5 of his 7 losses are also via submission. So to submit or be submitted. Now, Tony has a black belt in BJJ. He has a collegiate wrestling background at a Muskegon Community College. He won the 2006 championships there. He's the interim UFC lightweight champion. He had the 2018 Fight of the Year against Anthony Pettis. He was the Ultimate Fighter 13 alum and champion there as well. He's on a 7-fight losing streak. 12 of his 25 wins are via knockout, 8 via submission. So 20 of his 25 wins via finish. He's a finisher as well. To kill or die by the sword. Now, Michael, he's definitely been struggling. He's been doing a lot of TV work. I do think he's way better off at this point in his career, though, than where Tony is. Michael should absolutely have a striking and for sure a grappling advantage at this point in his career. Probably a bigger frame on him as well. I just don't think anyone knows what version of Chiesa is going to show up. What is his game plan going to be? He's had some pretty ugly losses of late, and we haven't really get to see his game plan, come to life. But I do assume he is going to go to the well, go to the grappling well, try to wrestle Tony, take him down, smash him, tire him out. But for Tony, I think he will do his wild strikes and random things that he typically does that's going to make no sense. I'm sure the UFC told him this probably is the end of it. Dana White's been vocal about him being done. So it may be a little chaotic. Maybe Tony gets lucky. But I'm taking the safe bet. I'm taking Michael Chiesa. I'm putting him on that parlay. We marking it down, and we getting that bread. Now moving on. We have Davison Deuce de Guerra Figueiredo, 36 years old with a 23-3-1 record and the number 6 next to his name, taking on Marlon Chito Vera, 31 years old with a 23-9-1 record and the number 4 next to his name. These guys a few years in difference in age, but a very similar record. And it's funny to see the difference between Davison Figueiredo, who is fighting some of the best he's ever fought in an upper division, and Michael Chiesa, who has kind of been ghosted of late. But this is a big-time fight for Figgy. This is his 3rd fight in the bantamweight division. If he shows out against Chito Vera, I think that puts him right in line for a title shot, potentially next in line, unless Corey or Umar outdo him in the performances. I do think Corey should have the next spot if he wins. But Cheeto got absolutely destroyed for 25 minutes in March in Miami, was there, saw it, and he just hasn't looked very great since his Rob Font fight, where he pretty much took control of the entire fight. But since 2021, his fights with like Frankie Edgar, Dominic Cruz, even Pedro Munoz, he'd been down like 2 rounds going into the third, finally found an opening and got a knockout finish. I just, if that is Marlon's game plan, to wait, find the shots, wear on his opponents, come forward and try to tire them out and open up for a KO shot, with athletic and skilled fighters in the top of the division, that's just not going to cut it. Figgy has only been finished by Brandon Moreno since 2019. Marlon definitely has more power than probably any opponent he's faced in his UFC career, though. And Marlon doesn't prefer to grapple, but he definitely can. I do assume Figgy, like he has shown in the bantamweight division, is going to mix in his grappling attack. And he was actually with Khabib and Umar this week on social media training, so potentially a hint there. But breaking this down, Davison trains out of Shootbox Diego Lima. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's the former flyweight champion. He had 2 separate title defenses. He has the fastest title fight turnaround in UFC history, 21 days in a turnaround in 2020. He's tied with Demetrius Johnson for most finishes in the UFC flyweight division history with 7. He was the fastest submission in UFC flyweight division history, 1 minute and 57 seconds against Alex Perez. That's why he had a 21-day title turnaround, because he barely sweated against Alex and got another fight. He had the most knockdowns landed in UFC flyweight division history with 11. The most submission attempts in UFC flyweight division history with 20. He was the 2020 Fighter of the Year. He had the shortest span between a trilogy in UFC history at 406 days. He was the 2021 had the 2021 Fight of the Year against Brandon Moreno. I did love me a little bit of Figgy and Brandon Moreno. He's a Jungle Fight alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, 3-1 since 2022. And he is 2-0 in the bantamweight division. 9 of his 23 wins are via knockout, 9 via finish. So 18 of his 23 wins via finish. He's been getting them finishes. Now Marlon trains out of RVCA. He has a black belt in BJJ. 4 of his last 7 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He has the most finishes in UFC bantamweight division history with 10. He has the most total fight time in UFC bantamweight division history, 4 hours, 24 minutes, and 51 seconds. He has the most submission attempts in UFC bantamweight division history with 16. And with the fighting time, it's because he always goes to the scorecards and doesn't do shit for 15 minutes. He was the 2022 Most Improved Fighter of the Year. He's an Ultimate Fighter Latin America alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak, 3-2 since 2022. 10 of his 23 wins are via submission, 8 via knockout. So just like Davison, 18 of his 23 wins are via finish. It's funny, they both have 18 finishes and 23 wins. Marlon does have a 2.5-inch reach and leg reach advantage. Now, unless Marlon gets a knockout shot, which over the course of the fight, sometimes he does, I do think Figgy is going to be more athletic. He's going to be the faster fighter, and I do think he will win more rounds on the scorecards in a 3-round fight. And again, Cheeto is only 4 months removed from being destroyed. There had to be some repercussions to his skull after that knee Sean landed. I thought I saw an x-ray after the fight. It was cracked. Cheeto's tougher than, probably too tough for his own good. But I heard that knee in person, and it sounded like Joe Rogan said, a baseball bat smashing a watermelon. I don't think you can implement, coming from injury, getting destroyed like that, letting your body heal, a completely new game plan. So I don't really see him outdoing Figgy on the feet for 15 minutes because he doesn't bring enough volume. Figgy's going to do that. For that reason, I'm taking Davison Figueiredo. We put him on that parlay. We marking that ish down. and we getting that bread. I always thought Figgy was a solid fighter. I always was pro Brandon Moreno in their matchups, but he just looked like an assassin, especially when he had the red on the bleached hair from the blood. I didn't think he would have the balls to move up in the bantamweight division. This is him jumping into the deep end. This isn't no Cody Garbrandt. This isn't who he's fought thus far. But man, if he comes in, beats Marlon, he's right there, and he shows at 36 years old he's an absolute problem and would probably be fun for the Sugar Show to scrap with. So bravo to Figgy. Moving on. Again, this is a very weird setup for the main card, but I'm assuming this is straight because of Abu Dhabi. In the co-main, we have Shara Bullet Magomedov, 30 years old with an undefeated 13-0 record, taking on Mikhail Husar Olegchuk, 29 years old with a 19-8 record. I'm not sure why this is the co-main event, but it is what it is. McCall has looked sloppy. He's been getting finished in the first round during his 2-fight losing streak. But to his credit, he is down to scrap. His last 4 UFC victories have all come via TKO or knockout, so he's willing to risk it for the biscuit. But Shara hasn't fought very good competition in the UFC thus far. I would say, though, that Bruno Silva is better than McCall, but McCall is going to make this an absolute brawl, which is going to be good for fight fans. Bruno Silva was going to do that as well, and Shara came out with a victory there. So breaking this down, Shara has a Muay Thai style. He's undefeated on a 13-fight winning streak, only 2-0 in the UFC, and 11 of his 13 wins are via knockout. Now McCall, he has a blue belt in BJJ. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He is 3-4 since 2022. 14 of his 19 wins are via knockout, and 6 of his 8 losses are via submission. Now, this fight's going to be absolutely straight chaos. This could be like Modestas Bukauskas and Marcin Prokhnio. It's going to be a Trevor Peek-like brawl. If you deep MMA fans know what that means. It's going to be a Trevor Peek-like brawl, as neither man is going to go for takedowns. I'd be shocked if that was the case. I do think both men are going to go for the finish. They're going to be coming hot out the gates to kill or be killed. You know, Shara, he's been working on his first acting role in a film, so I have no idea how he's been training. I do think Shara, though, has more confidence being undefeated in his prime. He has more options for knockout potential than Olegchuk. For that reason, I'm taking Shara Magomedov. I'm putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on into the main event. We have Corey Sandman Sandhagen, 32 years old with a 17-4 record and the number 2 next to his name, taking on Umar Nurmagomedov, 28 years old with an undefeated 17-0 record and the number 10 next to his name. Now, I'm absolutely stoked for this fight. I think Corey is one of the best in the bantamweight division. I think the best matchup for Sean O'Malley for the fans stylistically is Corey Sandhagen. But really, for me, this main event is to see how good Umar is against his best opponent, because his last competition that was probably the stiffest was Raoni Barcelos, and he's definitely declined with age. So now he's getting to jump into the deep end of the division. I haven't been super impressed with Umar like I was with Khabib or even Usman, but he is improving. You know, his striking is getting better. I don't think he's close to Corey's striking ability, unless we're looking at like really impressive wowing kicks, like question mark kicks and things like that. But I do think Umar is going to go full Nurmagomedov, put his name to respect here. He's going to try to get takedowns early and often, look to control Corey the entire fight, tire him out. I think Corey probably knows that that's going to be the game plan as well. These guys were actually scheduled to fight in August of last year, but Umar pulled out due to a shoulder injury. So they're going to have their game plans dialed in. They're very well prepared for this fight. It should be one hell of a main event. Breaking it down, Corey has a brown belt in BJJ. He had the 2021 Knockout of the Year against Frankie Edgar. He's an RFA and LFA alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, and 7 of his 17 wins are via knockout. Now, Umar has a Sambo style. He's an international master of sport in Sambo. He trains at AKA. He won gold in the 2015 World Combat Sambo Championships. He's a Fight Nights Global and PFL alum. He's undefeated on a 17-fight winning streak. And 7 of his 17 wins are via knockout. I want to see how many of those wins are in the UFC, though. I usually put that down, but I didn't. So he's on a 17-fight winning streak, but in the UFC he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 0. So not as many as I thought. Really, when I think about this, obviously Corey's been out for a year due to his shoulder injury, but man, has he looked good. He's improved his grappling abilities a ton. He showed that in the Marlon fight. In Umar's fight against a nobody, I don't even know the guy that he fought last. He got knocked down right at the start of the fight. That is, eye-opening a little bit. Granted, he did preserve, had perseverance, came back to win a grappling-heavy, lopsided decision. He grappled his way to victory. And in his Rayoni fight, he finished Rayoni early. He went to a decision with Nate Maness. Solid fighter, but not amazing. The UFC just cut him. It's really going to come down to if Umar can take Corey down, but not just take him down and hold him there. If Corey goes to grapple Umar at all, I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised. That's kind of Leon Edwards-esque. I do think this being a 5-round fight's even more interesting. I do think the longer this fight goes, the more it's going to favor Sandhagen. He has cardio for days. He's well prepared for this. Umar has never been into championship rounds. He hasn't been pushed, but him and his team game plans against their opponents brilliantly. That's why he's the betting favorite. But I'm taking the chances. I'm going with the proven underdog. I'm taking Corey Sandman Hagen. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Corey's coming to eat. Ho, ho. I am stoked for the main event. It's a solid fight night card. Again, ABC local TV action doesn't get better than that. That sets us up for next week, sadly, back to the Apex. It's a decent card for an Apex card. It's headlined by Marcin Tybura and Sergey Spivak. That's episode 59. I'm heading to Boston. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.